My parents forced their way into my house when I went on a trip, but I kicked them out and cut them off financially. I was away for a month, and my parents thought it was the perfect opportunity to break into my home. My life has been a disaster over the past year, and my parents have made it worse. Earlier this year, I broke up with my girlfriend of 10 years. We were supposed to have a summer wedding, but I ended things after the holidays when I discovered something truly terrible about her. Something that could turn your world upside down. Without going into details, let's just say it was something I couldn't tolerate. I ended the relationship within days, and our entire future vanished. After the breakup, I went through a really rough patch, feeling completely lost. I suppose you know how that feels, since we've all been through something like that at least once in life. So much time had passed that I didn't know who I was outside of that relationship. Summer arrived, along with the wedding date, and I felt miserable. I decided to spend a month in Michigan, surrounded by nature's peace and quiet. But when I returned, I found my parents had moved into my house. They'd always had their eye on my place, and my absence seemed like the perfect chance for them to invade. You see, I don't come from a wealthy family. We lived in a rented house. My parents worked hard to raise me and my sister. I'll always be grateful for everything they've done. However, that doesn't mean they can start demanding things beyond my means. Buying them a house is one demand I've dodged for years. I don't know how to say this gently, so I'll be blunt. My parents have always been difficult. Ever since I started earning money, they've expected me to cater to their needs and make their lives easier. They'd say things like, "Now that we've molded you into a man, it's time to repay us." They dropped hints about me buying them a house, but I never addressed it directly because, well, I can't afford it. After working like crazy for over a decade, when my ex-girlfriend and I decided to marry, I thought, why not buy a house first, and then settle down? When I shared this news with my parents, they weren't thrilled. It clearly upset them. Their dream of owning a house was shattered. Now that I'd bought one for myself, I couldn't buy another for them. But they've always wanted my house. For context, I didn't have the cash to buy it outright. I used my savings for the down payment and took out a loan. It was manageable, as the monthly payments weren't much higher than my previous rent. But if I'd done that for my parents, I'd have been left penniless, with no money to rent my own place. 2 years ago, when they first visited my house, they said things like, "I wish our place had a kitchen like this," or "a roof like this." Just a week after that visit, my mom called asking for money to renovate their rental. It was odd. Why renovate a house they don't own? That's the landlord's job, right? She claimed it was for decor, new furniture and accessories. I told her, "I just made a major purchase. I can't lend you that kind of money." She guilt-tripped me, saying, "We've lived in poor conditions. Everything here is old and rusty. We don't deserve new things, do we?" I stood firm and refused. At the time, I had an excuse. I was saving for my wedding in a year. They hated that I prioritized my life over their demands, which I found selfish. A cousin later told me my dad had complained he only cares about himself, bought a house, saved for his wedding, but nothing for us. I brushed it off, since extended family loves gossip, but their true colors showed after my breakup. At first, they rushed to comfort me, acting concerned. I was a wreck, barely leaving bed for a week. My mom offered to stay and care for me. How sweet, right? Wait, a week later, she dropped the bomb. "Now that you're single, you don't need all this space. We're thinking of moving in." She even suggested, "Maybe you could find a smaller place for yourself. This is the house we've always dreamed of." Imagine your parents trying to take your home while you're reeling from a breakup. To them, my success was theirs. They saw my house as a family home to share. I stood up and said, "I'm fine. I need to live alone." Eventually she left, but not before my dad advised, "Move out to get over the breakup faster. The house might remind you of your ex." I was furious. I broke up with her. She didn't die. Yes, certain spots reminded me of memories we'd made, but that didn't mean I'd hand over my house. This summer, I decided to escape the stress and drama by spending a quiet month in Michigan. I needed to clear my head, away from relationship ghosts and family chaos. The trip was good, But when I returned and opened the door, something felt off. Dirty dishes were in the sink, shoes littered the hallway, and my belongings had been moved. I panicked, thinking I'd been robbed. I crept into the bedroom and found my dad's clothes hanging in the closet and my mom's toiletries cluttering the bathroom. They'd even placed their wedding portrait in my room. Relief, it was them, not a criminal, lasted only a second. This was worse. I cursed myself for being careless. I had a security camera, but a few days into my trip, I realized it wasn't working. I thought I'd accidentally cut the power, draining the battery. I hadn't double-checked before leaving. The real story was different. I'll get to that. I immediately called my mom. She was at work and said, "We'll discuss it tonight." Later, she arrived pretending nothing was wrong, hugging me and asking about my trip. I cut her off. "What are you doing in my house?" She sighed, sat on the couch, and finally said, "Well, we thought we'd move here to look after the place. You didn't say when you'd return. Your dad was worried about leaving it empty so long." I asked if they'd tampered with the camera, and she interrupted, "It was easy to turn off without being recorded." I couldn't believe they'd disabled it deliberately, claiming they didn't want to bother me during the trip. I replied, "Regardless, I don't want you here. You need to leave." Mid-conversation, she said, "I'm tired. Let's talk this weekend. You must be exhausted too. Rest." I couldn't believe it as she walked into my bedroom. "Oh, and your dad likes this room, so we moved your things to the other one," she said, closing the door. I knocked, insisting we talk now, but she replied through the door, "Not now." I was livid. Hours later, my dad arrived. He stormed in and scolded, "How could you be so careless? You left the house ripe for thieves." It took me a moment to process. He said, "I had to mess with your stupid camera." For a second, I thought he was right. I retorted, "You can't just break in and manipulate me. You knew where the camera and power were, a thief wouldn't. That's no excuse to occupy my house." My mom emerged and said, "Oh dear, you're still on about that. The fact is, you left your house unsecured and we looked after it. Say thank you and move on." I said, "Fine, thank you, now please leave." My dad exploded. "Why are you so rude? Breakups are hard, but it's been over half a year. Get over it. Your ex is probably dating someone and here you are wallowing." I replied, "This has nothing to do with the breakup. I'm asking nicely, thank you for watching the house. I'm back now. When are you leaving?" They stared in disbelief. My dad asked, "Are you kicking us out?" I said, "I'm not kicking you out. I'm politely asking you to leave me alone. I want my privacy, and for you to get out of my house once and for fucking good." My mother quickly intervened, saying, "That's no way to talk to your parents. It's a 2-bedroom house, and you don't need this much space now that your girlfriend left you." It felt like a stab in the wound. I stormed off furiously to the other room where they'd moved my things. I called the police, who arrived quickly. But instead of removing them from my house, they told me they couldn't do anything because my parents' belongings were on the premises. Unless I had the property deeds, they couldn't evict them. And here's the twist, which has been both good and bad at the same time. The documents are stored at the bank, as I didn't want to risk losing them if something happened. This was good in case my parents tried something like destroying them, but bad because it was Friday afternoon, and I couldn't retrieve the papers to legally kick them out. Getting the deed from the registry wasn't an option either, so there was nothing I could do. Even the police warned that if I tried to force them out, they could sue me. When they said they couldn't intervene, I replied, "Well, if you won't do your job, I'll have to do it for you." I don't understand why this state has more laws protecting squatters than the actual homeowners. Update 1i received over 50 comments saying, "Serve an eviction notice." Guys, I knew this was an option, but I've been waiting for Monday to contact a lawyer. Some people argued they're my parents and I should let them stay. I assume those commenters are Asian like our family, but sorry to disappoint you and my parents. It's my house and they left me no choice. After spending the entire weekend trying to convince them to leave before Monday, I realized I had to take drastic action to reclaim my space. My parents showed no signs of leaving soon, and without legal steps, this would drag on. So, on Monday, I contacted the police again and consulted a lawyer about my options. I knew this would ignite a storm, but I had no alternative. This wasn't just about the house. It was about my right to set boundaries and have them respected. When I told them I'd file an eviction order plus a restraining order and call the police again Monday, they lost it. My mother burst into tears, saying I was treating them like criminals. Maybe pointing out that they were criminals didn't help, but last I checked, breaking into someone's house without permission is a crime. My father glared at me with unprecedented disgust. They accused me of abandoning the family and claimed I was kicking them out like strangers. I stood firm, clarifying I was just reclaiming my privacy. The days after revealing my plan were hell. Maybe I shouldn't have warned them, but I hoped to scare them into leaving. They tried every tactic. Endless emotional manipulation, random gaslighting. Suddenly, my father lectured about family duty, crying over how he'd worked 2 jobs to pay for my education. My mother joined in, recounting her struggles raising me while working full-time. They even dragged my sister into it. She called out of nowhere to preach about family importance, saying, "How could you do this to the people who raised you?" I shot back. "And what have you done? They raised you too, yet you barely visit or care for them. You've got no right to moralize. If you're so concerned, you buy them a house. I'll help you pick one with all the fancy things they want." She didn't hesitate to twist the knife. "Look, in the end, it's your parents who stood by you during hard times. You bought a house to build a future with your girlfriend, but what did she do? Still haven't learned your lesson, huh?" I hung up, saying, "I don't want a family that exploits my misery for their gain." They even roped in my uncle, who dropped by one afternoon to scold me. "You should care for your parents." He tried guilting me by recounting all their sacrifices. I don't get this crap. Parents bring a child into the world and raise them by choice, then suddenly demand repayment? How is that fair? To me, it's utterly repulsive. After days of stress and emotional warfare, they finally left. On Monday morning, milking every last second. At least they spared me a trip to the bank or registry and another chaotic police call. Still, I need to meet with my lawyer, which is next on my list. I want a long-term solution so I don't return from trips to find them squatting again. I could get a dog, but if I travel, someone would need to feed it, and I'm not relying on family for that. I wish this were the end, but knowing them, it's not. They'll return with new tactics. Sometimes I want to sell this house and vanish. I don't believe in curses, but this place feels like the root of all my problems. I've never been happy here. Is it even logical to feel this way? Update 2I forgot to mention a key point. This has been brewing for years. I've been sending my parents financial support, not a massive amount, but a significant monthly sum to help with bills. I thought it was natural given my decent income and normal in my community. To those saying I was too harsh on them, this wasn't their first attempt to blur the line between help and ownership. A year after I got my job, they borrowed money from my savings account, claiming an emergency. As usual, I agreed. Instead of repaying it, they ignored it. When I brought it up, they dismissed it, saying, "We'll handle it later." My mother snapped, "I can't believe you're nickel and diming us when you earn so much." I admit I had a decent income, but that doesn't mean I can frivolously waste it. I've financially supported them for as long as I can remember. But after everything, I felt betrayed. I couldn't justify aiding people who thought it was okay to hijack my life and exploit my vulnerability, so I cut off the payments. No warning, just stopped. While they lived in my house, they used my groceries and utilities. I don't eat out much due to allergies, so my kitchen's always stocked. The point is, they didn't need extra money during their stay. After they left, I severed all ties, including the monthly allowance. It was naive to think they'd leave me alone after this. How wrong I was. A month later, they pounded on my door, furious the money hadn't arrived a week into the month. I laughed at their entitlement. When they demanded why, I said, "It didn't come because I didn't send it." My mother screamed, "And why not?" I mirrored her tone. "Because I don't want to." They raged. I told them I had no intention of maintaining a relationship, let alone this one-sided entitlement. I'd helped by choice, but that choice was revoked. Predictably, they tried emotional blackmail to restart payments. My mother ranted about their sacrifices. My father insisted, blood is thicker than water, claiming I was tossing family aside over a house that's no big deal. I replied, if it's no big deal, I'll make things easier by keeping it and not handing it to you. Then things escalated. My father spun a new angle. Your ex probably left because you're too selfish. Maybe if you'd focused less on yourself and more on family, she'd still be here. I stood there in complete shock. How could they speak so freely about such a sensitive topic? They knew I'd been mentally struggling to move past this, yet they still made such a cruel comment about it. In that moment, something clicked inside me, and all the resentment I'd bottled up for years just poured out. I told them everything, how I'd felt manipulated my entire life, how they'd never respected my decisions or boundaries, and that I would no longer be their puppet. I said I needed to live my life on my own terms, and that they were free to do the same. My mother snapped, you only know how to play the victim. That's why you're alone. Maybe you're the one driving everyone away from your damn life. Work on yourself before you end up dying alone in an empty house. I couldn't take it anymore. I demanded they leave immediately. They kept staring, expecting me to apologize or take back my words. But I just walked out of the house. I stayed outside and demanded they leave. They had no choice but to go, cursing me under their breaths. Hours later, my sister called. I ignored it, knowing the context of the call. She then texted saying I was being too extreme and needed to apologize and fix things. Basically, they want me to revert to how things were before, keep sending money, and let my parents do whatever they want. But I can't. For the first time in my life, I feel free. I no longer feel indebted to anyone. I can focus on building the life I want without guilt for saying no, and honestly, it feels good. I don't know if I'll ever reconcile with my parents, and maybe someday I'll regret cutting them off like they say. For now, I feel like I'm finally living for myself, not for anyone else's approval. As for the restraining order, which my lawyer recommended, it hasn't been approved yet. These things take time if it's granted at all. Update 3. Before diving into the update, I need to address something personal, my relationship with my ex-fiancé. I didn't think I'd have to discuss this, nor did I want to, but many have asked. My parents also knew this information, making their comments about her even more insensitive. The short version, she cheated on me with a close friend. I ended the relationship after finding out. The affair lasted months, and discovering that betrayal was one of the most painful experiences of my life. At the time, I lost not just my fiancé, but also a friend, as I cut ties with both. More drama followed because they didn't make it easy, but that's too long to explain. That's why my parents claim that my ex left me because I'm cheap. Hurt so deeply. First, because I've been giving them money for years, money I don't exactly have to spare. Second, because I bought this house with my own savings to build a future with the woman who was supposed to be my wife. If that's being cheap, then I guess I am. I hope this clarifies things, especially for those siding with my parents, claiming my ex left me when technically I was the one who ended it. Now, for more positive news, I finally got the restraining order, and it's been worth its weight in gold. Though technically, restraining orders don't weigh anything, since they're just paper, but you get the point. Once I had the order, the first thing I did to celebrate, and because I felt safer, was take a trip. And what did my parents do? They tried to break into my house again. The difference this time? I'd upgraded my security cameras. As they were disabled, I checked the footage. Sure enough, it was them, or rather my dad, skulking around to shut off the cameras. I called the police and heard the usual spiel. We can't do anything because your parents' belongings are in the house. But this time, I came prepared with the proper documentation. Though I had to cut my trip short, I at least got the satisfaction of watching the police remove my parents from my house and detain them. The restraining order bars them not just from approaching me, but also my property. I also submitted security footage up until the cameras were disabled, and any other evidence I'd gathered. I won't bore you with the legal details, but they, had to pay a hefty fine. Technically, though, they didn't pay it. My sister did. She called me furious about everything happening to her parents, and because she now had to financially bail them out of the mess I'd created. I just replied, "Now you're free to be the good daughter and help them. At the end of the day, that's what you wanted me to do, but now you get the privilege of doing it yourself, which for you should be an honor." She hated that answer and hung up, but at least I've spared myself future hassle, as she and my parents can no longer contact me. I considered just blocking them, but that's easy to bypass with a new number. Instead, I changed my phone number and email addresses. It's been a headache, but worth it. So that's it. I know my parents know where I live and might try again, but they're also familiar with the police station's holding cell, so I hope that'll deter them. Edit. Since many have asked, no, my parents haven't tried anything new, thankfully. I think they got the hint, which wasn't subtle, from the police.